Assalamu alaikum. My name is Dr. C. Now today we will discuss the remaining part of the diuretics that we were discussed previously. So now in this lecture you will discuss about the loop diuretics and the thiazide diuretics and the other diuretics that are left in the lecture. So now starting with the diuretics. Now, now we are discussing about the diuretics. So what is the diuretics? Diuretics are basically the drugs which increases the production of the urine. The most diuretics basically inhibit the reabsorption of sodium from the various sites in the nephron. So as I told you about, the main principle of that is basically they usually reabsorb the reabsorption of the sodium. So wherever the sodium goes, there is the water along that follows the sodium and goes towards it. So basically they inhibit the reabsorption of that sodium in the nephrons so that the water follows that sodium and the water is excreted from the nephron. So they basically diuretics are basically used when there is an increased fluid level in the body, such in the conditions like in edema, cerebrovascular diseases, renal and the endocrinial causes. They are also used for the treatment of hypertension. There are the various types of the diuretics. So one of them is thiazide diuretics. Among that there are hydrochlorothiazides. The other ones are basically the loop diuretics. Among them there is a furosemide. Then you have potassium sparing diuretics, that is spironolactones. The others are the osmotic diuretics, that's mannitol, and the last one is the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Among that is the acetazolamide. Now, this is the basically structure. This is the basically basic structure of the nephron. So that is basically the glomerular capillary. That is basically the top of the glomerular capillaries. That is the base Bowman's capsule. Among them, there is basically proximal convoluted tubule. Then this is the descending thick segment of the Henle, then thin segment of the loop of the Henle, then this is an ascending. Now you are going to have the distal convoluted tubule, and that is also the part of the distal convoluted tubule. So this is the side where the various diuretics usually work. As we discussed that carbonic anhydrase mannitols are, these are the diuretics. They usually act on that part of the nephron. So the other ones are the loop diuretics. Loop diuretics basically occur at that point, that the loop of the Henle. They are basically occur in this point. Now, if you see that these are basically occur at this point. Now, they are basically going to occur in this point. If you we can see that the others are the thiazide diuretics. They usually work at that point of, that is the distal convoluted tubule. The other ones are also working at that convoluted tubules at this point. So this is basically a picture that usually shows where the different diuretics occur and where they reabsorb, where they have their mechanism of action. Now, we discuss about the thyroid diuretics. Now, if you are going further, we know that there's a diuretic that occur on the proximal tubules. As I told you that there are the osmotic diuretics, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. They are the basically diuretics that act on the proximal convoluted tubules. Now, other are the thing ascending. The basically loop diuretics that occur on the thing ascending loop of the Henle, the loop that goes to the upside. So, if this is the nephron, then that part in the previous slide I will told you about this part. No, but that is sorry for that, the loop diuretic basically act on this part, that is basically a thick ascending loop. As it ascends, as its name indicates, so loop diuretic basically act on this part. Now there are other diuretics that act on the distal tubule. Distal tubule is that part where there are the thiazide diuretics, and the remaining part, that is basically the collecting tubules. Here the potassium sparing and the other diuretics usually work. Now, if we know about the different types according to the clinical efficacy, now highly efficacious are basically the loop diuretics, medium efficacy thiazides, and the lower efficacy is among the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So if we have to remove quickly water from the body, so we will give the loop diuretics because they are efficacious than the other diuretics. Now, the first among the classification we will discuss about the thiazide. diuretic. The prototype drug of the thiazide diuretic is the hydrochlorothiazide. Other drugs are the chlorothiazides, and the chemistry is basically that they are derivatives of sulfonamides that contain thiazide ring. Structurally, they are related to the carbonic anhydrase inhibitor. Now, thiazide-like diuretics. These are the diuretics that does not contain the thiazide ring, but their effects are identical to that of the thiazide, and among that they are chlorothalidone, metolazone, and the enantiomides. Now, sealing diuretics. What are the sealing diuretics? Basically, these thiazide diuretics are known as sealing diuretics because if we are going on increasing their dose above the normal, they do not promote further diuretic response. As the sealing phenomenon is basically, I think the receptors are basically occupied by that drug above. If the all receptors are occupied and you are keep on increasing the dose, then this drug is not able to have that pharmacological effect that drug is going to have on lower doses. So that is basically the ceiling effect. So when you are increasing the dose of the thiazide diuretic up to a certain dose, they keep on increasing their diuretic effect, but that is up to a certain extent. When all the receptors are occupied, that is basically the ceiling effect. Then after that, if you increase the dose, then there is a no response of that diuretic effect. Now, pharmacokinetics of the thiazide diuretic, basically they are given orally and parenterally. The duration of action is about 6 to 12 hours. Now, what are the mechanism of action of that? Because as I told you that they are usually occur on the distal convoluted tubules, the part of the nephron, like this. That is a distal convoluted tubule. They usually are there they inhibit the sodium chloride co-transport that are present in the luminal membrane of that earlier segment. At that luminal membrane there is the channels which are sodium chloride co-transporters. They basically inhibit that. They must be secreted into the tubular lumen to be affected. They lose efficacy, decrease renal function. So if the renal function is decreased, they are going to have their decrease. Now, this is the lumen of the where that nephron. So basically, they are the channels. They are the sodium and the chloride channels. They basically causes the sodium to be coming to themselves. Then that there. So basically, thiazide diuretic basically inhibit the sodium chloride channel. So the amount of the sodium at that lumen is basically increased. As I told you that whenever there is an increase in the level of the sodium, if there is an increase in the level of the sodium, so what the thing is that the water goes towards that. So it is the water that usually follows sodium. So we are going to have that diuretic effect because of this sodium. Now, while we are talking about the pharmacological effect, as I told you, that diuretics are basically used in the condition in which there is an increased level of fluid in our body. So they are basically used for moderate and sustained sodium and chloride diuresis, as that inhibit the reabsorption of the sodium. So they are going to decrease the sodium in the body. Along with the sodium, they are also going to decrease the potassium. As I told you in the previous day about the effects, if we are talking about the effect of the diuretic, they usually occur on that segment, that among the loop diuretics and that thiazide diuretics. They are basically causes hyponatremic, hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis. All the diuretics are basically causing decrease in the level of the sodium and potassium. Along with that, they are increasing the level of the, they are also losing that hydrogen ion, so leading to alkalosis. Acetazolamide will usually occur at that point, that causes acidosis. Now, there, as I told, that is basically hyperkalemic metabolic alkalosis, because the thing is that they are losing the potassium and the sodium. They decreases the urinary excretion of calcium. So that is one of the most important point of that, and it is also a clinical use, because the thing is that they are decreasing the urinary excretion of calcium. So in the condition where the patient is having the stones in the kidney, they are the basically calcium stones, then the choice of our diuretics will be the thiazide diuretics, because as it removes that calcium from that. If the patient is having calcium stone, then the choice of the diuretic will be the thiazide diuretic, because it because it removes the calcium from that nephron. Now, pharmacological actions, they are causing hyponatremia. They are also used to the reduction of the blood pressure due to by reducing the blood volume, vasodilation of the arterioles and of the smooth muscles. So what is the blood pressure? A few points about the blood pressure. Blood pressure is simply the pressure that is exerted by the blood on the vessels. So basically what blood is basically composed of different compartments, among them then the fluid is very important part of the blood. So basically what diuretics do, they decrease the fluid level, so decreasing the pressure on the blood vessels, is they are decreasing that blood pressure. Clinical uses, among the major complication is usually in the treatment of hypertension of moderate intensity and well tolerated, because these are usually used in the treatment of hypertension because these diuretics are of moderate intensity and they are well tolerated and orally active. Useful in mild to moderate hypertension, that is the first use that for which we are using the thiazide diuretics. Now, they are usually associated with the condition in which there is edema due to heart failure, renal disorders among the nephrotic syndromes, cirrhosis, corticosteroids therapy, and estrogen therapies. Now, other are the nephrolithiasis. As I told you about that, they are usually inhibit the excretion of calcium in the nephrons, and basically they reabsorb the calcium from the nephrons. So they are associated with their use is associated with a hypercalciuric. That means an increased level of calcium in the urine. So they are basically used in the renal stone formation. That is because of an increased level of calcium in the nephron. So if in the MCQs you are come across an MCQ in which the patient that has an history of the renal stones, and they will ask you about that which of the following diuretics you are used, so you use the thiazide diuretics. They are also used for the disease of the diabetic insipidus. That is basically a disease in which there is the receptors that are present in the distal convoluted tubules. They are present at the collecting tubules, which are become resistant to the effect of ADH. So that is basically physiology about the diabetic insipidus. That is the part, and that is the collecting tubule. So here they are the channels which are aquaporins channels where the water get reabsorbed. So that is the mutation of that channels due to a certain conditions that leads the ineffectiveness of ADH. ADH is basically what? It is an anti-diuretic hormone. So it don't allow you to cause that diuresis. So basically that is a condition in which there is increased thrust and increased loss of there is an increased thrust. That is basically a condition. It causes a hyperosmolar urine which can be substitute for ADH. Urine volume may be decreased as it is an anti-diuretic hormone. So there is a mutation of that hormone. So you are going to have a decreased volume. They reduce the plasma volume. So they increases the sodium and the water absorption from the proximity. So less water is delivered to the dilating segments. The urine output falls. So basically whenever there is a decrease in the level of blood plasma, so the body tries to compensate by the other segments. So from the proximal segments you are going to have an increased sodium and the water reabsorption. So there the less water is going to the diluting segment, so the urine output falls. That is basically the condition in which they are given. Toxicities are basically, as I told you about the whole segment where you are going to have an hyponatremia, hypokalemia. They are also, you will be aware about if you are giving that diuretic with digoxins, they may produce due to the ventricular arrhythmias. They are also leading to the hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis. They are also causing hyperglycemia, hyperuricemia. The easy way to remember this, there is a mnemonic that is basically there is a mnemonic that remember glue. Okay, there is basically hyperglycemia, hyperlipidemia, hyperuricemia, and hypercalcemia. Okay, these are the basically side effects of the thiazide diuretics. An easy way to remember is that by that mnemonic, that is basically hyperglyc, that is basically hyperglycemia, lipidemia, hyperuricemia, and hypercalcemia. Remember the mnemonic. Now, coming to the slide, as I told you about, they are basically the thiazide diuretics which are occur on that part. They increases the level of the ions where they are inhibiting the sodium reabsorption. They are also excreting the potassium, so that leading to the hyperkalemia. So this is the diagram they're showing the side effects. Now, if you are talking about at the pancreas level, thiazide decreases the insulin secretion. So basically, they causes an increased level in the blood glucose. Now, toxicity among that, as I told you, the mnemonic about that L is for hyperlipidemia. They also increases the level of cholesterol and LDL in the body. They are also causing that allergic reactions. Always remember that the drugs which are having that sulfonamide groups, they are causing that allergic reactions. They are also going to have that hemolytic anemias and thrombocytopenia, that is in the decreased level of the platelets. They are also causing that photosensitivity, a generalized dermatitis, necrotic pancreatitis. These are the side effects of the thiazide. They are also causing weakness, fatigue, paresthesia, and impotence. Now, contraindication to the thiazide diuretics, they are contraindicated in the patient with defective liver, that is hepatic cirrhosis or borderline renal failure. Now, what is hypocalciuria? This is what is the reason. It is due to the decreased expression of calcium transpose protein, including epithelial calcium and epithelial calcium channels, that is calbindin. So basically, this is the protein which is involved in the reabsorption of the calcium. So these are basically involved in that calcium exchange. So basically, they decrease the expression of this calcium protein, so that the less of the calcium is exchanged with the sodium in the renal tubules. Now, hyperglycemia reason is that basically diuretic induced potassium deficiency, that usually leads to that hyperkalemia, that reduces the secretion of insulin by the pancreatic beta cells. So whenever you are going to have a decrease in the level of the insulin, so you are going to have an increased level of that in the blood, so leading to hyperglycemia. It also causes an inhibition of the uric acid transporter at that proximal tubules. So that by inhibiting that uric acid transporter at that level, proximal tubules, they are usually going to have that hyperuricemia. Now, what are the thiazide diuretics? They do not contain the thiazide ring. They are the basically an indamamide, which are used for the heart failure and hypertension. Metalazone, more effective in patients with impaired renal functions. Then metalazone is sometimes combined with loop diuretics to treat patients with diuretic resistance. Now, coming to the next category of diuretics, they are the basically loop diuretics. Among them, we are going to have that furosemide, pimetanide. These are sulfonamide derivatives. As you told about the diuretics which contain that sulfonamide group, they are going to have the allergic reactions. So they may have one of the side effect listed about allergic reactions at the end. Then there is the atherogenic acids, which are phenoxyacetic acid derivatives. Now, mechanism of action, they are the most efficacious diuretics. So they are the first line diuretics if we have to give. They inhibit the luminal transportation of the sodium potassium 2 chloride co-transportation, which is usually present at the thick ascending loop, that is that segment of the nephron, that is the thick ascending loop of that nephron. They induce the sensitivity of renal prostaglandins, which precipitate in the renal action of these diuretics. So NSAIDs can interfere with it, especially in the nephrotic or in the hepatic cirrhosis. So if you are taking NSAIDs because of another condition, so the action of these diuretics can be. Now, coming to the segment, these are the two chloride potassium channels which are present at the thin ascending loop. They basically inhibit that. So they are decreasing the secretion of sodium, chloride and potassium, and they causes the increase excretion of these salts so that the water swallow the sodium, so we are going to have that diuretic effect. Now, pharmacological actions we were talking about, these diuretics are there, they causes diuresis obviously. They have a potent vasodilatory effect on pulmonary vessels, renal tubules. So one of the most common clinical use of these diuretics is basically they are given for the treatment of the pulmonary edema. So that is one of the most common use of these loop diuretics. So in the MCQ, if you are going to have the patient which is having that pulmonary edema and the choice of the diuretic is asked, so loop diuretic is the answer. They reduces the pulmonary congestion and pressure. Pharmacological effects are simple, as I told you, that they causes hyperkalemia, hyperkalemic metabolic alkalosis. Now, among the clinical uses, as I told you, that is the one of the most important clinical use of the loop diuretics, that is basically the pulmonary edema. They are also used for heart failure, ascites, acute renal failure, hyperkalemia, hypercalcemia, induced malignancy, and other ionic overdoses. These are the basically clinical use of that loop diuretic. Now, in acute renal failure, diuretics increases the urine flow with potassium loss. They flush out intratrabecular cast, but they can worsen the cast formation in myeloma and light chain nephropathy. The reason is basically that in that there is an increased level of the calcium. So loop diuretic basically loses the calcium, so there can be a precipitation of the calcium at that level. So that's why in that conditions you are not going to give the loop diuretic. In ionic overdose, loop diuretic are used in the toxic injections of bronamides, fluorides, iodides, which are absorbed in the thin ascending limb, but saline infusion must be given to replace the loss of sodium. So basically you are removing that ions from the lumen of that nephron. So for that reason you are also removing the sodium along with this. So be aware that the patient can go into a low sodium state. So to compensate with that, you have to give a continuous saline infusion so that the sodium levels can be maintained in the body. Now, toxicity, as all diuretics are usually lead to that electrolyte disturbances. They all causes hypokalemic metabolic alkalosis. They also leads to decreased level of magnesium, that is hypomagnesemia. They are also causing hypocalcemia. Hypercalcemia that simply they decreases the level of the calcium from the blood. Thiazide increases the level of the calcium in the blood. So loop diuretic loses the calcium in the nephrons, and diuretic usually increases the reabsorption of calcium from the nephrons. So that is one of the most important effect of these diuretics. Toxic effect, they are the autotoxic. Dose related effect, that is reversible. So if you increase, as you are going to increasing the dose, you are going to have an increased effect. They are also reversible. So if you stop taking that drug, then there can be overcome. They are also most common in patients that are taking aminoglycosides along with that and diminished renal functions, because these all drugs are eliminated from the renal. So if there is a decrease in the functions of the that kidneys, so you are going to have an increased level of drug in the body, and that drug usually leads to that increased toxicity. Ototoxicity can be manifest as a tinnitus, ear pain, vertigo, and hearing defects. Now, toxic effects among that is hyperuricemia. Loop diuretics can precipitate gout by causing hypovolemic associated with uric acid reabsorption in proximal convoluted tubules. So, if the patient is usually suffering from a gout, so these is not should not be given. They can be prevented by lowering the dose of loop diuretics. So, if you have to give the drug to that patient, then you have to give them at a lower possible. Now, as I told you that all diuretics which are having the sulfonamide group, they are going to have that skin reactions, eosinophilias and interstitial nephritis. Now, contraindications. These diuretics should be avoided in patients allergic to sulfonamide, one of the most common condition. Excessive use of any diuretics is dangerous in patients with hepatic cirrhosis, borderline renal failure, and borderline heart failure. So they are not used in an excess in these conditions. Now at the end, these are the assessment questions. So you have to write down the answer of these questions and share in the group. Number one is the write down the mechanism of action of loop diuretics. What are the uses of loop diuretics? And the last one are the what are the side effects of thiazide diuretics. So this is all about the today's your lecture about diuretics. In the previous lecture we discussed about carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, osmotic diuretics and the potassium sparing diuretics, and this lecture we study about loop diuretics, thiazide diuretics. And just to review or just a summary of the diuretics topic what we have studied. So it is just the summary or recall of that. These are the segment where carbonic anhydrase they basically inhibit the carbonic anhydrase enzyme. So basically removing excess bicarbonate from the level. So basically they are going to have that metabolic acidosis. If we're talking about osmotic diuretics, they are basically having that osmotic particles or osmotic chemicals which usually draws water towards it. So they in this manner they are causing diuresis. If loop diuretics usually occur at the thick ascending segment of the HLA, there is a 2 potassium chloride, 2 chloride. They basically inhibit the sodium potassium 2 chloride channels. Then we have that thiazide diuretic which occur at that point. They also inhibit the sodium chloride channels. Now and at the collecting that we have that potassium sparing diuretics which usually spare the potassium, so their side effect may be an hyperkalemia, and they are also inhibit the action of aldosterone receptor at that segment. So this is all about the diuretics, and thank you for your today's lecture.